Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session on overcoming barriers to food loss and waste. Let me begin by introducing myself. My name is Raj Rajasekar. I am from New Zealand, Ministry for Primary Industries, and I'm also the Vice Chair of the Codex Alimentarius Commission. It is indeed my privilege to be moderating this panel session on a very important topic that I think that will resonate with all of us, as whether we are part of the industry, farmers or consumers. I have with me to engage in this important topic a distinguished panel of experts in their own respective areas, and we also have a panelist who is going to join us all the way from Colombia online. So on my left, I have Vincent Hebrel from the Embassy of France in Canberra, and he has had a long experience in this area from the French government perspective. And I'd like to welcome Miranda Mirosa, Professor of Food Systems from Otago University, and Professor Liang Wu from China. So it is, as I said, we have a very distinguished panel, and I'm looking forward to, and Vincent Hebrel, and of course, Quincy, welcome to this panel, all the way from Colombia. I hope it is not too unearthly for you, but we are looking forward to have you also contribute to this panel discussion. So without further ado, let me just briefly put the context. I can reel a lot of figures around global food loss and waste, but I think you will hear that plenty of that from our panelists. From my point of view, the key point to note is that food loss and waste is a global issue, not the least in the current context when we are talking about sustainable production systems, dealing with environmental pressures, dealing with climate change, and above all, trying to feed an ever-growing population. World population is expected to increase from the current 8 billion to 10 billion in about 25 years. So we have a huge challenge ahead of us, and any progress we can make to promote a more sustainable production system through reducing food loss and wastage is going to be a plus, and it has other significant benefits as well. So I think it's important for us to explore possible solutions. I would just like to start by also noting that this meeting is being broadcast virtually, and translation is available in all 6 languages of the ISO. So, and we have in this program broken up into 2 sessions. The first part of the program will cover some of the problems and issues, and in the second part of the program, we will have a discussion on some of the strategies and opportunities that we can leverage. And it's also, we also have a chance to hear both from the audience and from the virtual participants as well. So hopefully we will have some time between the 2 sessions to pick up some of your thoughts and issues and concerns and so on. So I'm looking forward to starting the conversation. And to start the ball rolling, I'd just like to perhaps start with Professor Miranda Mirosa. In the context of food system sustainability challenges, how important are the issues of food loss and waste, and how do we tackle them at a global, regional, and national level? Yeah. Welcome, and look forward to hearing.
The need for action on food waste is crystal clear. Globally, it's estimated that 40% of all food from farm to fork is lost or wasted, which is a phenomenal amount of food, which has, and then this loss and waste has quite dire consequences, economic, social, and environmental consequences. And just as an example of that, it's estimated that 10% of all human-made greenhouse gases can be attributed to food loss and waste, which is why reducing food loss and waste is often touted as one of the best sort of things we can do to tackle climate change. So it's a big issue with big consequences. It's a really winnable issue, I think. In terms of what we need to do to tackle it, the best practice approach is 3-pronged. It's to set targets, to measure, and then to act to reduce. We have international targets with Sustainable Development Goal 12.3 to reduce food loss and waste by 50% by 2030. We need to understand the landscape to measure waste. Where is it happening? What is its impact? What are the drivers? and then we need to act to reduce it, and we need to do so in a collaborative sense. Food loss and waste happens right through the supply chain at every single stage, which means we're all part of the problem, which means we can all be part of the solution.
Thank you very much. You have really described all of the different angles from which we look at food loss and waste. That's a very good way to start the conversation on this. I'll move to Quincy. You have a huge experience and role through your executive director role of SSafe, and you deal with a large number of companies, large and small. What are your thoughts on the issue of food loss and waste from a production to retail level, and what has been some of the experience of industry in addressing this issue?
Well, thanks so much, Raj. And again, apologies for not being able to be there with you, but thankfully been able to join you all remotely. So greetings from Medellin, Colombia. Well, let's first take the premise around the question that industry has a huge role to play. It certainly does, and so do others, particularly intergovernmental organizations, national governments, the financial sector, NGOs, and others. And it is this joint effort from the smallest farms to the largest multinational organizations, as well as these other stakeholders, that will help us drive towards that particular solution. You both already mentioned some of the statistics. We're going to grow to 10 billion people, requiring 40% more food. We're seeing waste being around 30% of food being lost. So if we can even halve that amount, that will have a significant impact in reducing hunger and significantly driving other sustainability goals. So to that end, what are some of the examples that we're seeing about what companies are doing? If I just look within our own membership within SSafe, Nestle have already implemented a number of technological and educational initiatives that are designed to help reduce food loss and waste by 50% by 2030, meeting that same goal that Miranda was just talking about. Kellogg's has similar ambitions, and they have, for example, been working with partners to reduce pre-harvest and post-harvest loss on farms to ensure that more food can be that is grown actually gets to the consumer. And Danone has been partnering with the Global Food Banking Network to bring more impact in food waste while helping people living in poverty at the same time as well and feeding the world. Those are just a couple of examples, but each one of our members are working extensively on a number of different food loss and waste initiatives. I think in terms of the success of these programs, time will tell, but it is important to recognize that the work is going on across the food sector, and we need to continue working together to drive that improvement globally, from the smallest farms in emerging markets to retailers in developed markets to consumers everywhere.
Thank you, Quincy. I think you have picked up an important point around where are going to be the greatest gains from strategies to reduce food loss and waste. And clearly, tackling it at a production level is going to be just as important as indeed the other parts of the food chain. So some of the large players, obviously, you're focused on some of the actions that are being taken by the big multinationals and large industry groups, but it's also incumbent on a lot of the farms, individual farmers, small farmers. So everybody has a role to play in this area, and I think we will have a chance to, in the second part of the conversation, hear a bit more on some of the strategies and opportunities we have as part of the global action. This is really a global issue. I'm reminded of the UN annual event where they have each year designate a year, and September 29th happens to be the year for raising awareness of food loss and waste each day. So it is from that point of view actions that are being recognized by multi-big organizations as well. Moving on to Vincent, welcome to this conversation. You've had much experience, particularly from the French government side, looking at some of the initiatives that have been taken in France. Could you like to just talk a little bit about how you have seen the problem from the French perspective particularly, and what are some of the key issues that you've had to deal with, and how you have approached it?
Well, thank you very much, Raj. It's a pleasure to be here. Great honor. Thank you so much. And good afternoon to everyone. So in France, indeed, food loss and waste represents around 10 million tons per year. That's around 15 million tons CO2 equivalent of emissions, which accounts for around 3% of our emissions nationally. So that's a big issue, and I believe that Miranda and Quincy obviously stressed the importance of addressing the challenge. Our food waste and loss comes mainly from the production stage, around 48%, a bit more than 30% at the restoration, and a bit less than 30% at, from homes. And so obviously it's an unacceptable situation that we need to address. And so starting 2013, the French government has been acting very strongly and committing to fight against food loss and waste. So we've done that through two main ways. The first one was to legislate very strongly on the matter. So we adopted national targets. So in line with the SDG, we chose to halve food waste, but by 2025, actually, not 2030. So 2025 will be for retailers and collective catering, and 2030 for the other sectors. So we do have these targets in our legislation, but we also legislated on a various range of matters, such as, for example, ranking the levels of action in priority. So first, we would have to prevent food loss, happening, but then prioritize donation, giveaways, processing into food produce that would be edible for human consumption, and then if it's not possible, animal feed, composting, or energy production. So there's this ranking in the law that allows us to act very concretely on the matter. We've also, in 2016, and I believe France was the first country in the world to do so, we've banned destruction of edible food by retailers and collective caterers and food industries also. So we've put in place a whole system, for example, making it mandatory for those actors to be offering an agreement to food association for donation. So there's this whole system in place. So this is on the legislative aspect of things. And then we've also adopted incentive actions. So we've got a national plan for food, which includes a pillar on food waste. We've also got a national pact against food waste, which relies on gathering around 60 organizations from the whole range of actors of the society. And this allows us to have very constructive discussions within the sector, involving government bodies, institutions, research, industry, NGOs, etc. And we've also put in place very proudly, a label, anti-food waste, which we called Label Anti-Gaspi. And so this is voluntary, but in this label, AFNOR, which is the French standardization body and member of ISO, was actually critical, gathering all the operators concerned and putting in place this label that I can give some details a little further. Yeah.
Thank you
Thanks.
for that. Thank you. You brought out the importance of legislative underpinning to give the structure to address provider strategy, and also some of the programs incentives and others that you have introduced at the national level to leverage opportunities and collective action to address food loss and waste. So that's and we will have an opportunity to pick up that one. I'll now move on to Professor Liang Wu. Welcome. You come from a country that has obviously have a huge interest, and you've taken a number of actions, as I understand it, around minimizing food loss and waste. Can you give us a brief introduction to what are some of your problems and issues that you're currently facing, and how you are currently addressing some of these, and how you're working together across multiple agencies as well?
Thank you, Raj. And it's my pleasure to be here in Brisbane. In China, we also face a lot of issues concerning food waste and food loss and waste. because China is a populated country, and we have 1.4 billion people, and then food production is also an issue, always an issue for China. Then we found that we cannot simply increase our production, and we have to reduce the north and west. So that is why our President Xi Jinping have repeatedly asking for measures to bring down the north and west amount in China. And but there is challenges, of course, and we actually the situation right now is that we actually do not know exactly how much waste is produced in every stage of the value chain. And there is scattered research work along the chain from harvest all the way to the dining table. But because China is a very large country, and then we don't have exactly, or we don't have precise numbers on each and every part of the chain and the region. So that's and also the evaluation work is very labor intensive and also economically intensive. So that's why we have very scattered evaluation work and research. This is the biggest challenge right now, because we want to locate how much we could do and what's the amount of reducible north and west in our country. But then we also found other challenges, because if we want to reduce north and west, when we have to invest, and we found that the opportunity cost is very high in China. Actually, it happens in many other developing countries and also developed countries. And for example, if we want to pick up the weeds in the field, then you normally use a neighbor, and then you find that the neighbor cost is usually much more expensive than the income that we got from the benefits that will come from the weeds. And in some extreme cases, discarding food is much more simple for reducing and the waste. So this is why we are asking the government and also the institutions to invest on the infrastructure, because if we have high technological levels, then we would harvest more and we lose less. And then also the other infrastructures, such as the storage and even dry in the agriculture sector, they also can benefit from this investment. And then we also have some challenges for example, in implementation, because now sometimes we found that people have no idea what the north is, on the table, and we cannot simply quantify this is you have a north and you don't, because we don't have criteria for that. So then even the enforcement is also very difficult to achieve. So in the past years, we try to meet these challenges by a few initiatives. For number one, we had a legislation system. We are the number 3 or number 4 country in the world to have our own law on anti-food waste, and this is after French. And then after the law, we have a series of regulations that is comply with the law, and so that's how we built a pyramid system of legislation. And we also have other laws that is located from harvest to storage, processing, and consumption to all the ways during the past several years. For example, we have the laws for maintaining the agricultural product quality, and then we have also other opinions, regulations, or something other provided by the government of agencies. And the number 2 initiative we have is the standard system, and we have actually established a general standard system all the way from harvest to processing, storage, and consumption. And this year only, we have published 2 national standards that is to guiding food loss in the catering industry, and then in the government canteens for this endeavor. And then we also have local standards, and we have enterprise standards. And during the past years, we have around 10 local standards that have been enacted, and then over 60 enterprise standards. They can make joint forces to support the whole standard system in China. And then we also have a lot of publicity work. The government have been using the TV and the radio and urban advertising system to publicize and to educate the general public for they to know the knowledge and to increase their awareness of anti-food loss and waste. And all this week have contributed a lot to this work. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Liang. You've highlighted the importance of infrastructure investment, the need to reduce loss at the production stage, and there could be significant gains from that. But you've also raised the issue around coordination, raising awareness through education campaigns, and the whole issue of also legislative support as well. So I think it brings together really the importance of all different parties working together to address this whole question, because every one of them has a role to play, and if any one of them do not necessarily take the action, it may not necessarily maximize the benefit from that. So I think this is an important point that we will pick up in the context of the next stage of the next part of the discussion. Thank you for the contribution so far. We have an opportunity to take a couple of questions, one from the audience on what you have heard so far from this part of the session, and then we will take one from the virtual participants as well. So at this point, I would like to ask if there are any questions from the floor. If you could please identify yourself and indicate where you're from and what your interest is, and then raise the question, and then we will try and see whether the panelists are able to pick up the point or the question you have in mind. So the floor is open, ladies and gentlemen. Are there anyone who have an interest in raising any particular question at this stage? Yes, please. Yep.
Thank you, Pascal Poupet from Florent in France. You mentioned that half of the food waste is at the production site, and I was under the impression that logistics also played a role, especially when precisely logistics are not up to technology and possibilities, especially moments in the logistical chain when there is a break between a system and another system. And I don't know if you can elaborate on that, because why I mention that is that standardization can historically has played quite a role in logistics, packaging, and everything that relates to transport and packaging of food. Thank you.
I'm happy to jump in there. A lot of the waste that we see that occurs on farm as a result of decisions made further up the supply chain at the producer and retailer level. And so I think it's really important we don't sort of automatically jump to blaming the farmer because largely, like you said, it's logistical supply chain issues that are market issues that are often outside of their control, and often as a result of standards that are set by the retailer, for example, around what fruit and vegetable produce must look like. And a banana needs to be this bent, and a carrot must be this straight, and so forth. So I think it's a really valid point, and something that we need to take in mind, and goes back to this point that Raj keeps making, that we need to treat this issue as a whole supply chain issue. Otherwise, if we just look at specific sort of hotspots along the supply chain, all we risk doing is moving that waste up and down the supply chain rather than truly eliminating it. And yeah, something we can all participate in as consumers is letting. Is just being willing to be a little bit more relaxed about the cosmetic standards of our produce. Let's eat some of these nutritious but slightly misshapen apples, tomatoes, etc.
Yes, I've heard stories about how products produced are rejected because of misshape or appearance and so on. And I think consumers obviously are the people who make choices, but part of the thing is about consumer education and making people recognize that as long as the food is safe and determined to be safe and it meets the standards, then it should be perfectly acceptable to consumers. So that's another message. I think that raises the question about how can we promote better understanding and acceptance and recognition of how food loss can be influenced by different actions, both personal and at a regulatory and other levels. So we have an opportunity. We have a couple of questions from the virtual audience. I'll take one of them. One of them is. We have one. Have there been any surveys showing which countries waste the most food? Let me begin by saying this is a global issue. I think I've seen food being wasted in every country that I've traveled to. So I don't know whether there is a real accurate measure of how much is wasted in any given society. It's fair to say there are significant losses across different parts of the world. So. Any comment or insight on that, Professor Liang?
I think UNEP have published a publication in 2021, and they reviewed a lot of publication, the articles, and then they have built such database. And then they do, based on this, they had the evaluation. But I don't know if there's any the exact, because this evaluation methodology is also not so very. I mean, they're not based on very extensive work or data. The data is not efficient. There is a data gap in almost all the countries. So this evaluation can only give us a general idea of what's the situation right now, but not exactly how this country is wasting the most food. I think this is basically the result.
I think it's really important to remember that we have a global food system as well, and food doesn't stop, within our national boundaries. So just like we don't want, need to keep the whole supply chain and push it up and down that, we don't want to be pushing it onto somebody else as well.
Yeah, you pick up a can of tomatoes in, I think we have that in New Zealand. They pick up a can, it says made from imported and domestic ingredients. So, that's the connectedness that we have in the world. And, if food was lost in one jurisdiction, it doesn't mean it's all produced and sold within that jurisdiction. It's, again, reflects the nature of supply chain now, and it has become truly global. So again, that reinforces the need for all of us to work across jurisdictions and across areas and bring together and have a holistic collection. And that's something that we will explore a bit more in the second half of this session. But Quincy, there is a question for you from the... sorry.
If you allow me to jump in also on the last question.
Sure.
Yeah, I trust it is useful to state that the EU, for example, has made it mandatory for all member states to be reporting data around food states, around food waste since 2022. So it's obviously very fresh, but it will be a good way to be comparing data within a group of countries. But still, needs to be addressed the need for harmonized methods of measurement, as stressed already.
Thank you for that additional perspective. Question for Quincy from the virtual audience. How will SSAFE and its members participate in the ISO initiative on reducing food loss and waste, ISO TC34 SC20? Quincy?
Well, a very simple answer. We're a participant in the actual committee. So as the work moves on and as we start seeing drafts, we will use the expertise that we have within our membership as well as with the partners that we work with to input into that work.
Thank you, Quincy. I think that reinforces the need for all the players to participate in various multilateral initiatives and programs. And I, as a Codex rep, I say that it's also appropriate. And Codex has something like 250 observer organizations, industry, consumer groups, and so on. And all of them have a role to play in contributing to international action in this area. So it's been a very useful first half where we've explored some of the different perspectives, some of the different challenges, and some of the perspectives, particularly from the food systems perspective, the interconnectedness of the food chain, and where different actions can have different impact, and the need for all of the different parts of the food chain to work together. So we'll pick up some of the further ideas and strategies in the second part of this discussion. But I'd like to thank again both the audience and the virtual participants for contributing to the discussion this far. Moving on to the second half of the session. This part of the session will invite panelists' thoughts on strategies and actions needed to overcome barriers to progress. I'll start with Quincy this time. Quincy, what actions can industry and retail sectors take to minimize food loss and waste, and what is the role of international standards and facilitating improved outcomes?
Thanks, Raj. So I think I already gave some examples earlier, right, about what some of the companies are doing, at least those within the SSAFE membership. And there's many, many more such examples. Food processing itself, as well as food packaging, are two other very good examples of things the food industry has been doing for decades, if not centuries, particularly when we look at processing, to make sure that there is extension of shelf life of food, that food remains safe, and that ultimately leads to a reduction in loss and waste. As we continue to see advancement across the sector and innovation to improve the sustainable aspects and impacts of food processing and packaging, we should also continue to see improvements in sustainability as well as reductions in food waste. SSAFE as an organization has been a great supporter of food protection systems, including standards, ever since we were founded 20 years ago. It was actually one of the core purposes of founding the organization. Certain diseases and climate disasters can cause entire crops to be destroyed. We've seen significant examples. Panama disease for bananas. We saw the frost having significant impact in Minas Gerais in Brazil a few years ago on the coffee production. These kind of things have significant impact on food loss. Therefore, in our view, two key aspects are fundamental to drive forward the reduction of food loss and waste. And first, that is the trade of safe food around the world, to be able to feed people everywhere, particularly in moments of crises. And the development of standards by IPPC, the International Plant Protection Convention, Codex Alimentarius, your organization, Raj, and ISO to underpin our food protection systems. So why are these three particular organizations that important? Well, International Plant Protection Convention, because its standards help to keep our plants and crops safe around the world, and that is where we see the largest amount of loss. So if we separate loss and waste, we focus specifically on loss, that is where the majority of food is lost at this point in time. Second one, Codex Alimentarius, because its standards underpin the regulatory systems upon which the world really depends to keep our food safe. And then ISO in particular is very important, and this is also why we so actively participate in so many ISO committees, because its standards provide the guidance needed for all types of food businesses around the world to diligently work on reducing food loss and waste. And that is really why SSAFE, our members, we actively participate and collaborate with these three important standard setting bodies to reduce food loss and waste including the new ISO work that I was just asked about by the audience as well, that is currently underway.
Thank you, Quincy. You have highlighted the important role that the three international organizations are already playing in this area. It reminded me of some of the work that Codex has been doing around labeling and some of the specific standards relating to food safety management at the farm level, production, processing, and distribution, because that's where, minimizing some of the hazards during the production and storage are going to be significant. It can provide significant gains, not merely in terms of improving incomes and outcomes for farmers, but also protecting against food loss and waste. Turning to Professor Liang, what have been some of the strategies that China has implemented in recent years, and what is your outlook for the future in terms of your overall interest in achieving whatever targets you might have in reducing food loss and waste?
I think right now the Chinese government has adopted a systematic solution or system to curb this issue, and especially we do it both top down and bottom up. For the top down part, we are still continuing enriching our nature systems, legal systems. For example, the food security law that is under revision these days, and they have listed reducing food loss and waste as one of the 8 pillars of ensuring food security of the nation. And then we also have other initiatives, the strategies that's to include reducing food loss and waste into the national strategies. For example, we have the eco-civilization campaign or the initiative, and then we have the carbon strategy that is to reach carbon peak in around 2035, and then carbon zero onto 2060. And there is another strategy that already includes reducing loss and waste into these systems. And then we're also trying to put the standard system into normality. That is, we try to find the gaps for each steps of this value chain, and we try to formulate and revise the standards so that enterprises and also the general public can understand and to be participating in these activities. And then the country also, they try to educate people, especially, for example, the students. Right now, the educational system is also encouraged to include reducing food loss and waste into their textbooks. So these students, the pupils, they learn their agricultural system. They know how to respect the other people's the work, and from very beginning of their life. And for the future, I think China will still. We also have our national strategy, I guess, from the very beginning of the value chain, and then we will also stick to the ISO strategy 2030 to make life easier, better, and safer. And all this can be embedded in these strategies of Chinese government, and I think that's my answer. Yeah.
Thank you. It's obvious that you've got a lot of initiatives on the go in China to address the full range of issues right across the food chain, and that's going to be quite important to get to where you want to be in terms of reducing food loss and waste. Vincent, can you give us some thoughts on what how you have seen the ISO and Codex work in particular fitting into this whole conversation, and what, in your view, are some of the important areas where these standards have helped reduce food loss and waste?
Thank you, Raj. Well, the main thing is about collaboration throughout the food supply chain. It's been stressed enough, so I won't repeat this, but I believe we all agree on the need to be, making everyone talk to each other about the issue to make progress. So ISO has a TC34 Ag committee. France has the honor to be chairing this committee, and under this committee there is one around food waste created by Denmark in 2021. So this subcommittee is indeed tackling the issue of food waste through three main means, being developing standards for management systems, developing standards for measurement of food waste and loss, and also designing guidelines for best practices. And I believe it's a very good illustration of the importance and critical role of standardization organization in globally in tackling food waste. And it has to be indeed connected with the work of Codex Alimentarius, because when addressing food waste, you address necessarily the edibility of food before it gets to waste. And so all the aspects of food safety, use by dates, etc. So for the moment, the collaboration between the two bodies is still very fresh, really looking forward to exciting outcomes, but it's a necessary pathway ahead of us. And I believe also it's interesting for me to jump back to the real quick mention that I gave around the French label around anti-food waste during the first one of interventions, because it was developed in France by AFNOR, piloting, the working group. So AFNOR is French standard organization, and the idea is, so it gathered 70 stakeholders from the whole range of operators from the whole food supply chain, and they together designed 3 different labels or different categories for the same label, addressing to retailers, food industries, and collective catering. And for the moment, and it's been since March 2023, the label for retailers has been implemented successfully. So we have around 15 establishments approved by the label. And so what is interesting in this approach is the head office doesn't get to be approved by the label. It's each establishment. So it really emphasizes the need to have a local approach with providers and local ecosystem economics and social. And so we're looking forward to make progress. So it's on the way for collective catering, should be out next year, and food industries a year after that. And it really shows the importance and the utility of standard organizations to be able to bring together all the actors concerned into this collaborative approach, and hopefully this will be also a useful target internationally.
Thank you, Vincent. It reminded me of the work that Codex did a couple of years ago around reviewing the Codex guidelines around the use of labels such as and terminology such as use by and best before. As consumers, it is it's something that is often misunderstood and can potentially have significant consequences in terms of whether food is consumed when it is perfectly safe or thrown away when it is, it need not have been. So that work was important to improve consumer understanding and provide greater clarity around what is used by and what is best before and provided. Because I do know from experience in various parts of the Pacific, in particular, how sometimes produce arrive very close sometimes to their use-by date, and sometimes that leads to products being rejected. Equally, sometimes because of lack of consumer understanding, food that is past the best before date is thrown away when it is perfectly safe for consumption. So you can see standards do have an important role to play in terms of influencing consumer behavior, consumer understanding, and in their own way, collectively, if you add it up at a global level, they can have a significant impact on minimizing loss and wastage. And I think, again, reinforces the need for multiple instruments, which is a recurrent theme that is coming through this conversation around food loss and waste and so on. Moving on to Professor Miranda Mirosa, do we have a coherent, well-coordinated strategy across food systems to tackle the problem of food loss and waste? And what would be your key priority areas for action?
It's a complex question. Do we have a global, united food loss and waste strategy? No. There's definitely some well-developed strategies happening at a national level, and we've heard about China and France. In New Zealand, where I'm from, we have a group of food waste champions that are representatives from across the food supply chain who are working to advocate food. Sorry, Lawson, I'll keep talking. Progress towards the SDG 12.3. One of our flagship projects that we've been working on is a voluntary agreement to reduce food loss and waste in the food industry, and we've heard about similar programs that are happening. But we really need to keep working to make sure that these programs and initiatives and groups that are working at the national level are coordinating and creating synergies at that international level as well. And we need to keep funding these sorts of initiatives and upscaling, where possible. In terms of key priority action areas, Vincent, you mentioned the food waste hierarchy, and I'm always really keen to push the message that we must absolutely keep that in mind when sort of looking at investment and prioritization of actions. We really need to first and foremost prioritize the prevention of food loss and waste whenever possible. And only then, if we cannot, look to redistribute, reuse, create energy from, etc. We've seen a lot of attention in the food loss and waste space in the food rescue or food redistribution sector, which is great, but we need to first. It doesn't address the root cause of the problem, and I think if we can. Rather than sort of providing this almost band-aid solution, if we can first look to address food poverty and reduce the number of people that are food insecure, as well as looking to prevent the food waste from happening in the first place, that's where we need to be putting our investment money and our time and our energies. And then the same goes, again, a lot of investment going in New Zealand and elsewhere into managing waste streams, and we're investing a lot in anaerobic digestion, for example, turning waste into energy. Again, we don't want to build too much infrastructure based on current waste, because if we are successful in our mission to eliminate or to reduce the amount of food loss and waste, then we won't have so much need to process and deal with all this waste. And so I guess that's my sort of key message in terms of priority areas, is just keep pushing our investment and our energies further up that food waste hierarchy, and first and foremost prevention, always.
Thank you. Those are some important points there, importantly. I think, again, the food systems is such a connected sort of a world that we do need to make sure that where are they going to be the greatest gains, and what should be the priority areas for action, and how can they all collectively enable us to deliver to the outcomes that we want to achieve. As you say, focusing on any one particular area may not necessarily be the solution, because there may be other areas where that will provide us greatest.
We need a whole menu of solutions, don't we, right across that regulatory, technical, and social space.
Those are the choices that governments and regulators are having to make, and indeed industry too, if you ask Quincy from the industry perspective as well. So I think the recurring sort of a message that we get from right through this conversation is that this is going to take collective action, concerted global strategy to get to where we want to be, which is, I've often said that, we're talking about minimizing food loss and waste. The ideal would be to eliminate food loss and waste, but I think that would be a distant goal, if at all. I think it's a case of continuously investing right across the production, processing, and distribution and at the consumer level. And often enough, the latter part is often, also quite important from the point of view, for example, consumer education, providing information to consumers, providing information to how to store it and handle food. And there is often a saying, you put yesterday's food in the fridge to eat tomorrow, but often enough they get wasted. Tomorrow you look at the fridge and you've forgotten that it is there and you've already cooked something else and so on. So, there are different behavioral issues. Consumer education starts in the school, at the home, what we put on the table. So there are all these different factors that come to play in this area. We have some opportunity for some further questions. Again, we will have a look at the online. Thank you. This time round, we'll just turn the order. We'll try and see if we can get some questions from the audience, looking at what you've heard on from the panel on the strategies and actions going forward, what actions we can tangibly take to reduce food loss and waste. We'll look at some questions. So we'll start with some questions from the virtual audience. We'll see if there are any questions coming through from the virtual audience. If people interested online can pass forward any questions, we'll have a look at and see. There is one question we have here. Have there been any initiatives on food recycling? Who in the panel would like to pick up that idea, issue? Miranda, do you have any thoughts?
I'm not sure. Recycling is quite a broad term, so I'm not sure what the intent of the question is. But there's a lot of work happening in the upcycling food space. And so this is taking byproducts in the manufacturing process or even parts of the foods that were considered, sort of previously considered inedible, skins and peels and husks and things, and processing those and bringing them back into the human supply chain. And so it's really exciting because this is a really fun way that we as consumers can engage in this challenge is by expanding our culinary repertoires and eating new flavors and products. And there's actually an Upcycled Food Association with an Upcycled Food Standard that is certifying these products. There's over 500 such products on shelf and on the supermarkets in the US, and we're seeing these products sort of emerge all over. So I'm not sure. That's one form of food waste recycling. I'm not sure if,
maybe there is also one behavior campaign that's called a food bank. You probably know that. This is part of the way that food can from these bookstores or the restaurants to go to other people, like the people who need food in any other institutes. So we also have such a food bank system in China. Actually, they are not allowed to use the bank the word bank because it's related to the financial part. But then this will also call it a food donation system, such things like that. But there's a lot of issues with the food security, food safety issues, because then if there's something happened, well, who should be responsible for that? And there's a lot of work to do. I mean, to make sure that the food donated are safe and the responsibility chain is clear and visible to everyone along the chain. Yeah.
Thank you for that. There's a further question. I'll take one more question from the virtual audience. Have you considered having any minimum payments guaranteed for producers and farmers as an incentive payment? Particular question for Professor Liang and Vincent. Any thoughts on how payments can influence the behavior and investment incentives for farmers to address the issue of food loss and waste?
Yeah, okay, sure, I can jump in first. In the EU, we have the Common Agricultural Policy. It gives subsidies to farmers, but they are conditioned with following very strong regulations on a various range of matters, mostly environmental impacts of production. But I believe it would be, why not, an opportunity to be thinking about linking those subsidies to managing food waste at a farm scale. I'm not sure where we stand at on that topic for now, but it's definitely worth some thought.
I think it's really raises the question of price mechanism and its influence on any thoughts, Professor Lia?
From my side, I think payments could somewhere help to reduce the loss in the farm field, but then it will be also come back to the opportunity cost. If the payment is too high, and who is going to do the payment? And sometimes we would prefer that this financial support go directly to the infrastructure, and also, for example, to the science and technology, so that we could improve the infrastructure and the machine, and also some goes to even the training system. That's for example the combine operator. They know how to reduce the loss. So and also the other system that's also included in this the whole system. I think the financial is also very important part, but the problem is how we're going to use it wisely. Yeah.
Can I jump in there, Raj? Just with a different take on that. I think we need to de-risk for farmers, and there's one of the things that is being discussed and practiced in some parts of the world is whole of crop sort of purchase, where retailers are agreeing with the farmers up front, even before planting, to purchase all of the crop, which means that there's that certainty of return for farmers, that everything that's harvestable will be harvested and purchased, and then the sort of onus for using that lies with the retailer, who will have to sell what they want through their traditional retailing facilities, and then look for secondary markets or alternative markets.
Thank you for that. I was in fact going to ask that same question of Quincy from an industry perspective. What are the upstream, downstream sort of investment opportunities there might be, to integrate across the supply chain, and how might that help reduce and get as much of the produce that's produced, in fact, down to, up to the consumer, and minimize the loss in the process right across the various chain?
Yeah, look, I think ultimately anybody across the private sector, right? Nobody likes to see loss, because it ultimately impacts directly down to the bottom line, whether you're a small herb farmer in Turkey or a large global retailer or caterer like Compass, for example. So nobody really likes to see that waste. The thing is that these issues are very complex. If they were very simple, we would have solved them already and moved on, right? So one of the things we always see with these sustainability challenges, and here's then a question around, do we pay farmers enough? You adjust the dial here and you mess up something else over at another area. So a lot of these initiatives also, although we look for solutions at a global level, a lot of these will differ very drastically at a national level. The food system in New Zealand is quite different from China, which is quite different from France, which is quite different from Colombia, where I'm at. And as a result, it's not a one solution fits all. I think ultimately everybody's interest is to reduce food loss and waste. I don't think that anybody is in there applauding at any point in time when we lose food, when we lose or waste food. So yeah, and that's why we need to continue working together to solve these problems.
Thank you, Quincy, for that comments on the role of everybody in this. We have time for one question from the audience before I try and wrap up. We are coming rapidly to the end of the session. Is there anyone who wishes to? Yes, gentleman, right up here. If you can identify yourself and where you're from, and the question for, if they've got a particular question for a particular member of the audience, please say so.
Great, thank you. Ray Wu with Canadian Standards Association. Just wondering if the panel recognizes or is concerned with any, critical information or research gaps that might still be barriers to, broader policy action or standard solutions.
Good question. Good question. Miranda, would you like to start, and then I'll give the floor to Professor Liang.
Sure. I mean, I think the data gaps have been mentioned. We've been working on this for a long time, but we still there's still a lot we don't know, particularly at the earlier stages of the supply chain on farm and so forth. I think we have a real gap in knowledge around some of the social innovations in this space. Around, there isn't a lot of tried and tested behavior change initiatives that are specific to food loss and waste. So I think we've got quite a bit of work to do in that space.
Thank you. Any quick word from Professor Liang?
Besides from the data gap that we have been facing in the past 2 years, we also have a technical gap. For example, if we want to monitor and evaluate the food loss in restaurants, it will be very tough work, because then we have to send people to weigh how much the cost on left behind after the daily. But then it will be very labor intensive, and then we will actually looking for technologies that can do this automatically from either images or from other automatic machines. And I think this could help for each restaurant or for the government to know the situation much better. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We're rapidly running out of time. I'd just like to finish up by asking each of the panelists if you could just briefly, in one line, what is your key takeaway message you would like to give on this issue, starting with Professor Liang.
Okay, I think everyone is responsible for the food that we've been involved with, and the governments and also the individuals have the responsibility to bring down the loss and waste on their own way. The reducing food loss waste is a very long journey, and it's needs support from different aspects, from legislation standards, from education, and also from the science and technology department. And we're looking forward to improve the situation.
Thank you. Miranda?
I mean, I said at the start, I'll say it again, I think food waste is a really winnable food sustainability issue. It really is, and we just need to commit and do it. And if we do, we'll be better off socially, economically, and environmentally.
Thank you. Quincy?
I would just say thank you to ISO for setting up the new committee, and we really look forward to getting deeply engaged into the topic and finding solutions through that standard setting process that are impactful and helpful to everybody around the world.
Thank you. The last word from Vincent?
Yeah, well, what an honor. Thank you, Raj. Well, last words, of course, collaboration, raising awareness, obviously, because it's everyone's business, indeed. And also a more personal note from myself, because actually here in Queensland, I've been meeting with very interesting startups doing, amazing work on the ground at a very, very local scale, and they're doing their part of the job and making a difference. So let's acknowledge also what they do. And it is part of the solution also.
Thank you all. Thank you, the panel, for your excellent contribution. I think, as you have heard, food loss is something that we all have a stake in, and a role and responsibility. We have a collective responsibility to take action at all levels, right from the time we have at the home, at the industry, at the office, at every level. So I think, collective action is going to be critical to getting the world moving in the right direction. I think, we can talk quite a lot, but I think the key messages, strategy, coordination, a clear commitment to take action are going to be quite critical for us to move in the right direction. And as I said at the beginning, we have a chance to really recommit ourselves as we approach the International Day Awareness of Food Loss and Waste that is to be celebrated on the 29th of September. So it's an occasion again to raise awareness of this issue, which again I think has a potential to make a huge impact. Just finish up by saying that I'd like to express a great big thanks to the panel, Vincent, Miranda, Professor Liang, and of course not the least Quincy, all the way from Colombia. I hope you can now go and rest, have a well-earned rest. And thanks, audience, for your participation and attendance at this session. And I should also thank the virtual participants as well for your contribution. And it is my pleasure and privilege to have had the opportunity to moderate this session. Thank you again. Let's give a round of applause.
Thank you, Raj.